All right. Good morning, good evening, good day, what have you. This is Ryan here, and I basically just want to give you a update about where I've been for the past couple weeks, what I've learned, and also where I'll be taking the channel in the next couple of months. So, probably most people watching this won't have been regular viewers at the time of the events that have occurred over the past couple weeks, but I know there are a few people who actually do seem to care about um, what's going on in my life and uh, things of that nature. And although I think it's really important for me to not really have that go to my head, at the same time, if me sharing my experience with other people is something that is of value in some cases, then I'm quite happy to do that. So what I would like to do is, for the first portion of this video, I'm just going to explain what kind of went on, bearing with the fact that I have no intention of discussing the um, employment process of the company and things of that nature out of respect. So I might be, what I'm trying to say is, I might not be saying super explicit things, but just understand that the reason for that is out of respect of the company, which hopefully we've amicably agreed that I won't be working with them. But it was a really interesting experience, and I'd just like to share it with you. So basically, what happened was about roughly 3 or 4 weeks ago. I don't know. Time just disappears for me, but I guess about 3 weeks ago. um, I saw a job posting for a local company, and they were looking for an Android developer. And it just kind of worked out that this was a company that I'd been in contact with a year prior. And at the time, a year ago when I contacted them, I was very much a junior developer still, and things didn't really work out so well at that point, and that's totally understandable. But anyways, about 3 weeks ago, I saw that they were looking for an Android developer, and I remember the week that I applied was a particularly frustrating week for me because I had just recently smashed my Razer headphones and my phone charger and a number of things, and so I was a little bit upset. And I thought, well, let's just shoot an email off. Anyways, fast forward, I managed to make it through the selection process and to the contract negotiation stage with this company. They very kindly let me into their office for a couple of days just to meet everyone and to see how they kind of do things. And that was a really wonderful experience because I firmly believe that they have a team of very talented and smart individuals. So that was a really great experience for me to actually be in that kind of an environment for the first time ever, because let me tell you, I'm a working class dude. I'm used to working with in kitchens and construction sites and on the sales floor. So it's a special feeling to be sitting in a just with a group of motivated people in your field. Anyways, at the end of the day, the things were just not going to work out, and it had nothing really to do with the company and everything to do with the fact that at the end of the day, I'm not strongly motivated by money because I don't think that money should ever be the end goal. I already know that it won't make me happy. I'm not saying I don't want money, but what I'm trying to say is that this Wise Ass channel is something that I love. I love the fact that I get to wake up in the morning and get nice comments, and even I love the bad comments. They generally amuse me, especially when they're really dumb. But anyways, there's some good bad comments. I love that stuff. It's like, you want to call me out on my code? Let's do this. Anyway, sorry, total tangent. At the end of the day, I just wasn't really comfortable building other people's dreams, to the extent that the very reason why I started this channel and decided to learn Android apps was so that I could basically do my own thing and not be beholden to anyone else's schedule or checkbook. And it's not to say that I don't think that the company would have taken care of me or anything like that. That's really quite beside the point. I wish them well. But at the end of the day, what I realized is that I actually just intrinsically enjoy talking about software architecture. I like building this stuff live on camera. I like talking to you guys and girls and all you people and everything in between. And that is just not really. There's things which I simply can't go into detail, but suffice it to say that I'm just happier doing it my own way and making my own money. And that's really the gist of it. So I wish their team luck, and I don't think they need it because they've got a talented and motivated group of bright people. But at the end of the day, I'm happy to do my own thing. Anyways, so that's basically just to summarize, I went through the selection process and I feel like I did a great job with it, just personally. Whether I actually did on their end of things, that's for other people to decide, but I did learn REST and retrofit in a couple of days, which I'm pretty proud of. So anyways, let's move on to other things. So what I wanted to talk about now is plans for this channel. I'm basically, without a doubt at this point, going to be spending the summer primarily working on this channel and continuing to build my apps. So what I wanted to do is share with you the projects that I'll be working on. And yeah, and if you have any feedback, well, let me get to that at the end. So there's a couple of things. For starters, first and foremost, to date, my most successful tutorial is the recycler view tutorial. Now, while I'm just going to be perfectly honest with you, that was the first tutorial that I ever made, and it's quite rough, and there's a lot of stuff in it that I would like to improve. Now, I ran into a situation a couple months ago where I was considering just sort of refactoring the old project and then doing more content that's up to date. But then I realized, I'm going to have to I'm going to want to rebuild the thing entirely anyway. So, longer story shorter, I'm going to be redoing the Recycler View tutorial series completely, but things are going to be better. What I plan to do is I'm going to be rebuilding my Forgettery app, which I originally built for my SQLite database tutorial, which was a crappy tutorial. I'm going to be rebuilding that. So the first iteration, what I'll do is I'll show you how to build the front end, and in that I'll reteach how to do a recycler view and a nicer looking one with animations and stuff. And here's the cool part. This is the part I'm excited about. During my time kind of just farting around over the past couple of days, I managed to put together a Realm database, a working Realm database. You can see my current implementation of that in the most recent commit to my repository for PosTrainer. I'll put links down in the description box. And so longer story shorter, I'm familiar with the basics of Realm now. So what I plan to do is I'm going to build one front end, which will be the Recycler View tutorial, and then I'm going to build a back end with Realm database and a back end with SQL Bright. And what I intend to demonstrate is that you can actually do that quite easily if you sort of follow software architecture design patterns. The way that I'll be building the front end of the app, the view and the presenter and that stuff, isn't going to know or care what kind of database it's talking to. Now, that's hard to describe. I think it's straightforward enough to describe it, at the high level, but it's actually, yeah, just watch out for that. I'm excited to explain the whole idea behind that, because I think if you use good software architecture principles, you can get away with having multiple different backends and stuff like that. So I'll be showing you how to do that, and I'm excited about it. And just before I continue, I would also like to show you guys just one particular thing. So nowadays, whenever I'm building a new app, I always start with sketches. Now, This, keep in mind that if you're working in a company, you've probably got a talented UI, UX person, so you don't need to do that. But if you're an individual developer like me, you might be, this might be useful to you. But here is an actual sketch of the user interface for this new app that I'll be building. And this is actually the sketch that I will use to build the app. I haven't started on it yet, but it's not super easy to see. But just to give you a quick example, and what I plan to do is I'll show you the process of making these sketches and how I decide to do that, and also what they help me with, because it's more than just figuring out the user interface. The sketches also help to decide the back end, because it helps me identify like what data do I need to display, and then from that sort of models the back end to a degree. Sorry, I'm tangenting, but I think it's still interesting information. So that's the first thing for Gettery. Here's what I'm going to do. So that's going to be my main focus this summer, is rebuilding for Gettery, but there's a couple other things. I'm currently in the process of finishing PosTrainer, which is one of my open source applications. Again, I'll have all the links in the description box. It's basically an alarm manager app, so if you're curious about learning how to use the alarm manager in Android, the project isn't quite complete yet. But my goal for it is I wanted to build an app which heavily leverages system services. So when I say system services, I'm talking the phone vibrator. I'm talking the like the location manager, the alarm manager. These are all things that are very tightly coupled with the system. So what I wanted to figure out is, can I pull those outside of activities and things like that? Can I decouple that stuff and put it in a service classes or things like that? Now, I'm pretty sure that I can, and the way that I'm working on doing that is actually through Dagger 2 dependency injection. I'll have lots of content about that application because it's actually nearly done, and I'm excited to talk about it. So I'm going to be working on that. So I'd suggest you check out that repo if you're interested in alarms or Dagger 2, because Dagger 2 appears to be what allows me to decouple those system services from the activity. Because what I wanted to avoid was having to pass those things into the fragment and the presenter and all that stuff from the activity. Because if I'm correct, that's just not a very safe thing to do in terms of memory leaks. And what Dagger 2 allows you to do, if I'm correct, is, well, what it allows you to do is you can build those services as singletons. And if you don't know what that is, don't worry about it. I'll explain it in detail. As singletons, I'm kind of trying to give you some technical stuff. You create them from the application context instead of like activity context. So longer story shorter, I'm really excited about that project. I think it's going to be an interesting thing. Is it possible to decouple that stuff and just kind of wrestle it from the Android sort of framework to a degree? Moving on, we've also got Profiler, which is a huge application that was basically me learning how to do REST. There is a whole bunch of stuff that I've learned to do better in the past 2 months since I finished that first iteration of the project, and it's going to require some heavy refactoring. So I'm going to be spending a lot of time doing that. And what I plan to do is actually do two main things. For starters, I'm going to improve the authentication for Profiler, the user authentication. It needs a lot of work. That was my first try at Firebase authentication ever, and I've since seen a lot of better ways to do it. I'll also be implementing chat into that application, so that's another thing, but I'll get to that later. So there's that. There's only a couple more things. I realize this video is getting on a little bit long, but I'm not in a rush, so if you are, then you can turn it off. Next, there's a couple dedicated tutorials I would like to do. So by dedicated tutorials, if you're someone who likes my content, please do me a favor and go and check out my tutorial video on Android Java interfaces. I would love to hear constructive criticism on whether that is a good format to teach sort of specific topics, I really tried to simplify the explanation and give good examples. So I'm happy to hear constructive criticism on that for anyone who cares enough to give it to me. So there's three main dedicated tutorials that I'll be working on. Number one, fragments. I'm really excited to do a very kind of deep dive video, as the wonderful people from Fragmented Podcast frequently refer to it as. I want to do a deep dive into fragments and how/why they're useful, and kind of get into the debate over whether you need them. So that will be fun. I would also eventually like to do a Dagger 2 practical tutorial, but I tell you, Dagger 2, I've got it working, but it's a real complex mechanism. The only thing I've seen that is of the order of complexity of Dagger 2 is RxJava, to be honest. I think probably RxJava will be ultimately more complicated, but I actually had an easier time picking up the basics of RxJava compared to Dagger 2. Now, I'm not saying, whatever. And the last dedicated tutorial will be Model View Presenter. Now, I need to shore up my understanding of it just a little bit more, but I feel like I'm really starting to see how useful it is. So I'd like to do a dedicated tutorial talking about MVP and all that kind of stuff. And lastly, one last technical thing, and then there is one more item which might be relevant to you if you're not interested in the tech stuff. So as of a couple of months ago, I kind of made a personal goal to build, or to try and figure out, a general purpose, scalable, efficient architecture for building Android apps. Now, of course, it's kind of a silly goal, because at the end of the day, there's never going to be one way to build every app, and I know that's the case, but I am confident that I'm moving towards a very regular and a group of APIs and technologies which all have their purpose. And that's really my goal with APIs like Realm, RxJava, Firebase, and concepts like clean architecture and Model View Presenter and all that stuff. My goal is, what of those things do I need? Where are they applicable? And hopefully I'll be able to communicate that to you eventually. Let's change over to something else now. So that's sort of the technical stuff. Those are the technical projects that I'll be working on over the next couple months. And I can't give you specific timelines on it, but that's the gist of it. And lastly, what I wanted to do this month is I wanted to do a non-technical Q&A at the end of this month, which is April. So I'll probably, on April 31st or sometime slightly after April, I'd like to record a video. This will be a non-technical Q&A. I'll get to technical stuff in a minute, but for anyone who's just curious about me and what I do and all that kind of stuff, if you have any questions you want to ask me that are outside the realm of Android for whatever reason, that would be the place where I'd like to answer it. One thing that I have always really loved with the people that I've watched over the years on YouTube channels and so forth is I've always enjoyed watching the Q&As and stuff like that. So if that's something you're interested in the comment section below, on my Google+, on my Facebook, whatever, please feel free to ask questions. I won't answer them right away, but I will be doing, if I get enough questions, I will be doing a non-technical Q&A video at the end of this month, and that is the one thing you can actually hold me to, assuming I get enough questions. Lastly, is the streaming schedule. What I would like to start doing is, now that I have a better sense of, now that I'm more comfortable with the stream and being live and all that kind of stuff, and I've seen how ADD all over the place I kind of am, what I would like to do is, I would like to do probably once a week just a technical Q&A live stream session. So instead of me trying to build apps and teach that kind of stuff half the time and then answering questions half the time, I'd like to kind of divide that into separate sort of streaming sessions. Now, my general streaming schedule is going to be all over the place, but I want one day, probably on Sunday, where you guys can and girls can come and ask me questions like, how do I do this? How do I do that? And I don't have all the answers, but you know, I want that to be the place where you people can do that. So that's basically it. Yeah. I'm very, very excited about this channel, and I plan on growing it into a well-oiled machine. And all that's left is many hundreds and maybe thousands of hours of hard work. And I'm happy to put the time in. So that's all for now. Thank you so much for the amazing support. And please, you know, ask questions if you're curious about anything. I'll do some more, I'll post some more content on social media asking for questions. But thanks for watching, and have a great day.